Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Traders Workshop, where we like to bring on the NinjaTrader ecosystem experts to help you become a better trader. I'm your host, Tom Schneider, CMT with NinjaTrader, and before we get into the good stuff, and we've got some great stuff this week, I do want to remind everybody that futures and options trading contains substantial risk. It's not for every trader. You could potentially lose all or even more than all of your initial investment. So that's why we recommend you use risk capital. What is risk capital? Money you can afford to lose, doesn't keep you up at night, doesn't extend your retirement horizon. We also want to remind everybody that past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. And what we talk about here in this program contains neither trade recommendations nor financial advice, but should be taken only for educational purposes. And with that, it is my delight, my pleasure to introduce to you Jeremy Tang of SharkIndicators. He'll be our guest this week. I'm really excited. Jeremy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be on the show. It's my first time, so
Yeah, no,
yeah.
we're excited to have you. You know, one thing in the getting to know you phase, really interesting. I'm on the East Coast. Most people, who've watched my shows multiple times know that. But Jeremy, where are you located?
I'm in Calgary, Canada, Alberta, where it's frigid cold. And about last week we are minus 20 something centigrade degrees Celsius. So it's yeah, we're used to it, but that's where I'm from. So the frozen wasteland, I like to call it sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I've been up. I haven't been that far west. I've been up to Winnipeg. How far is Winnipeg from where you are?
It's this Winnipeg's pretty central, so I think we're looking at maybe I'm guessing here, probably an 8-hour drive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I
maybe
just
more.
I just remember being in Winnipeg in May and sliding on the ice that's on
Yeah,
the road. So
yeah.
very strange. So
I've
I
seen
can
snow in
imagine where
June.
you are. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So you got to be pretty tough, I think, to
yeah.
be living up there.
That's why I think we have very nice people here. Actually, they've just been so beaten down by the weather that you know what can rude people do to you? At that point.
R-
Yeah,
Right. You've seen it. You've been treated worse by the weather, right?
exactly.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that's great. Well, I'd love to get out there sometime. I know Calgary traditionally has had a futures market, right? There's a futures exchange, or there was a futures exchange in Calgary, I believe. Um, have you had experience with that since you've been doing this with Shark
oh,
Indicators, or?
yeah. I mean, I'm talking about 20 years ago. I think I was kind of with a company that we're looking at going public. It never happened though. But and to be honest, that was a lifetime ago, so I don't remember much.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even think I stepped foot in the exchange. I just talked to some people that
Yeah,
were
I don't want to put you
investment
on the
brokers or
spot,
whatever.
Jeremy.
So
That's
yeah,
just,
yeah,
yeah, a little bit of trivia. But,
yeah,
since you mentioned it, 20 years ago, how did you get, what's your career path been? I mean, Shark Indicators now,
yeah.
but how did you get to this point and where did you start? If it was it in the markets, was it somewhere else?
Well, I think about like a lot of people, I started okay, first of all, I'll say I'm a software developer first and foremost, and I still consider myself that. I've been a software developer since I was a young kid. Like I started programming when I was I think grade 3, 4, around there.
Wow.
Um, and so I've basically kept on doing that. But somewhere around about 15 years ago, I decided I tried my hand in the markets, and back then there was a lot of sorry, I would say it's kind of early days in terms of what's available now, but a lot of the online education uh, kind of wasn't there like it is today, and so I took in-person classes, believe it or not. And so I flew out to a hotel somewhere in a conference room and sat in front of a huge rather in a big kind of ballroom environment with an instructor up front, and learned how to trade that way. They presented a bunch of systems up there, and I took those ideas and went to the computer and tried to start trading with it without much experience, and probably like a lot of your viewers, I'm experiencing my first trading experience was pretty traumatic, to say the least. So um, after that, I decided, well, and be honest, I sort of I really want to make a serious go at something in this category. And although maybe I'm not cut out to be a trader necessarily, because I found whenever it came to studying the chart and stuff, my eyes would just kind of gloss over, and I'd find myself just kind of bored. It wasn't really my calling, I thought. And instead, I found every time I was like, when it came to, doing something in this area, my first instinct was, I'm going to write some code on something. I don't care what. I just want to write code. And eventually I was like, what if I just build like an auto trader trade for me? Then I wouldn't have to manage my emotions and stuff like that. And at some point I hooked up with a friend. My friend and I started following a discretionary trader online who was really good. And then we thought, you know what? Like, all we got to do is just make an auto trader that does what this guy's teaching, and boom, we're gonna make lots and lots of money or whatever, right? Just turn the on button and let it go. And of course, things are when you dive into it a lot more complicated. When you get into the depths of things, and one of the key things that we noticed right away was that this discretionary trader was constantly kind of evolving his trade system, tweaking it almost on a daily basis, if not certainly week basis. And I was like, there's no way you can keep up. Every time we watch this guy trade, and he was doing good, of course, and then he'd come up with a new concept, and then he'd try it out, and I'm like, then I got to go back to the drawing board and start coding again. I was like, it was a never ending work cycle. I thought, well, you know what? Why don't I just make something that I can just quickly configure on the fly, just to like mimic this guy, and then that'll be a much easier way to do it instead of having to recode it all the time. And that was kind of the basis of our first, eventually became like the first product when I that we have at SharkIndicators, which is basically a programmable kind of indicator that I say that in quotes because you don't really program with it. But you can configure it to do any kind of signals that you'd like it to do. And that's kind of how
Jeremy,
born.
So your signals, when you say signals, is it, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but is it for the purpose of visualizing, or is it for the purpose of evaluation, or both? Is it kind of, were you trying to quantify what you were doing? Were you trying to, or is it just for qualification, visual, checking it out, or saying, hey, here's a signal?
Yeah, so it can be any of those, because it really at its core it's again a programmable indicator, and however you actually decide to use it, whether you want to create discrete signals to trade off of, like actual long and short signals, for example, or you don't have to use it that way, but you certainly can, or you can use it to say mark up your chart with zones of bullish or bearish trends. Or maybe you want to mark up the chart with areas that what you figure are good setups to look for entries. Any combination of those is really possible, because it's really just a generalized, like a really fancy calculator or brain, if you will, that does exactly kind of what you tell it. And things like, look at the price action against this indicator. Is this indicator sloping up or down? Is there an inflection point here? What did the price action do? 4 or 5 bars back. How are these two indicators, like, are they what are they doing against each other? Are they expanding or contracting? All those things that are, like, I guess, intuitive to most traders that are technical traders that are looking at these charts anyways. And then just you can sort of describe that to I'm going to call basically the product's called Bloodhound. You can describe that to Bloodhound, and Bloodhound will just happily kind of mark up your chart as you see fit.
So Bloodhound is a way, basically, instead of trying to tackle the trading portion of trading, right? You were trying to say, how can I make it easier for traders? Whether you're a trader or not, that's not the point here. You saw a challenge that's, in trying to become a better trader and following this discretionary trader, you actually stumbled upon something that might be a little bit more A, valuable, but B, right in your field, right in your wheelhouse of what you do and what you've been trained to do as a software engineer.
Yeah, I like to. I mean, because I certainly get a lot of questions like, "Why aren't you a trader?" And I realize, kind of in this ecosystem, it's small, and you got small companies at work, and so they sort of expect you to be what's that phrase, the chief chef and bottle washer, chief cook and
Right.
bottle washer at the same time. And I really believe more in specialization, and that people have certain skill sets, and they can add different things. And so the analogy I like to bring in all the time is, if you think about like Adobe Photoshop, right? That's a really well-known software product. And the users of Adobe Photoshops are artists, right? But the people that make Adobe Photoshop, the actual software, they're not artists; they're engineers. And those engineers are, of course, probably the top of their field, and they make fantastic tools. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's they make the tool, they hand it off, and they let the artists create what they like to create with the empty canvas. And that's really exactly what we've got built here. Is in our software. It's called Bloodhound. I consider it like an empty canvas. Um, and I focus on building a great tool so that traders, like aka artists, can make their trade systems, or express their sort of their trading methodology inside of the software.
Oh, that's great, because I think as a new trader, and certainly in my experience as I explored technical analysis and became more familiar with it was one of those, we call it kind of a kid in a candy store, right? There's so much out there. You walk into the store, your eyes are bulging, and you're just like, give me everything, right? And I want to discover everything. But to be able to go through everything, to be able to evaluate everything, how do you do that, first of all? And then second of all, when I was doing this, there weren't a lot of tools that allowed you to easily say, I have an idea about this indicator. Let's find out what my idea um, will result in, right? Is this a good idea, or is it a bad idea, or is it an idea that has no bearing on anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the evaluation of those ideas, uh, as a non-programmer, I've had some programming experience, but not like you. It's not something that it was my profession. Very difficult, very, very time consuming
Mm-hmm.
to even just put one idea into software and see. And I'm talking 20 years ago, 22 years ago, maybe 2000 is when I started that path. And to have a tool like Bloodhound to be able to easily do that, I think it's the easy part that I really like, which is um, you don't have to be a programmer to be able to express your ideas. We don't always think in programming terms. We just
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, when I notice this about this indicator, this might happen. How often does that happen? Or am I right about that observation? But I don't know how to program it. So I think that's what's really unique about Bloodhound. Just seeing you use it last week when you were showing it, in the Zoom call
Yeah,
we had, it's
cool.
like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like you don't need to know programming. You just need to know how your idea works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one thing we like to impress upon a lot is, yeah, and actually that's one thing I've always wondered. Is the average trader, when they're looking for trading ideas, and they're trying to figure out what's going to make the money ultimately. How do you go about doing that? And say without our software, right? You would have to probably mark up your chart and manually, look at the places where the entries would be, and then manually tabulate how much the profit or loss would be on a particular trade, and then you know get that in a spreadsheet or something, add it all up and see if it was profitable, and do your analysis there. Um, and like, there's a lot of problems with that. Obviously, it's just incredibly time consuming. Too, it's just really prone to errors. Like, you may have this idea where you're looking at slopes, or for example, of a certain indicator, and like, man, like, you have to really strain your eyes sometimes to see which way is an indicator sloping. And if you're just doing that repetitively over all this historical data, like, you're going to make some mistakes. There's no doubt about it. So you're really not going to know if your tabulated results in the end are even accurate, for one. And then when you finally figure out, okay, well, this isn't working, I want to change it up, then you got to go back and then you do the whole process over again. And you could be probably 100 years old by the time you finally come up with a system that's like workable. And so obviously you want to use the computer to do that, right? Because that's what they're good at. They can compute these numbers really fast. But I think the realization a lot of people don't, that leap that people don't make, is that if you want the computer to do that, then you have to tell it when you're going in, how those trades are going to come out, how those orders are going to be managed, and perhaps even, money management rules and that sort of thing. Everything. It's actually basically got to know how to trade. In other words, you actually need a full-blown auto trader to do that. Like there's no way around it. And so, and that word has sometimes got a little bit of a stigma to it, I realize. But if you want to back test, that's what you need, is you need a full-blown auto trader. And so that's what our tools ultimately let you do, is you can create full-blown auto traders. Now, whether or not you actually use them for trading in the live market is up to you. In fact, I would say a vast majority of our customers do not use it as a full-blown auto trader. They may use the auto trading capability to do the back test to verify their system first. And then they look at it and they're like, great, this is viable. Okay, now I can practice trading this particular system in the live market. And then they choose to because, they want some control over it. They choose to trade it discretionarily. So they still use our tools to trade discretionarily. And our tools are, we don't try to kind of put you in a box and say, okay, if you use our tools, you must use the auto trader. No, we look at it more like a spectrum, right? On one side, you've got the auto traders. On the other side, you got the discretionary traders, and you're somewhere. Generally, most of our customers are somewhere in that spectrum, and you can sit anywhere in that spectrum comfortably, and our tools will adjust kind of like to how you like to trade. And not on top of that, you can switch on the fly even if you want to. Like some people would like to trade discretionary for this particular trade. The next trade, they might maybe just let the computer do the whole thing. It's really up to them, and they can switch on the fly and just whatever they feel like at the moment. So
That's great. You mentioned the slopes and identifying slopes, and are they positive, negative? Sometimes it's hard. I worked with a technical analyst on Wall Street who looked at, I want to say he looked at 3,000 charts a day, in the morning. Came in, he had a certain thing he was looking for. And of course, most of those were, nope, doesn't meet it, doesn't meet it, doesn't meet it, doesn't meet it. But he's identified this particular set of situations. Very hard to program. I couldn't replicate it with what we were doing. We were trying to do that so that he could press a button essentially and go through his 3,000 charts.
Right.
And identify that pattern, but the pattern was there was a lot of wiggle room. It wasn't a hard and fast rule. And so I know there are, to have that lift taken off of you makes you just that much more effective. Now, as a day trader, we're not looking at 3,000 different markets, right? We're looking at, a handful of markets. They're the big markets, right? They're the S&P, they're the Russell, they're the NASDAQ. They might be crude, they might be gold, but still the idea of going through even, let's say, a dozen charts before you even start trading, to go through and say, are my rules, are my situations, are my indications met? Manually, you're right. That's something that takes up time. So I understand that part of it being very, very efficient, to be able to say, let me run my list, let me see what matches, what doesn't. So, really, really big proponent of, making that more automated, as long as it meets your, it meets your criteria that exactly what you want, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and on top of that, like when you throw the stress in as well, it becomes incredibly difficult. You got the ticks coming in, you got potentially your financial future at risk here. I'm harkening back to the days when I tried trading myself. I lost like $1,000 within the first 15 minutes, and at least at the time, I was like, I'm out.
Right.
I can't stomach this. I'm sure a lot of people, like, maybe listening to this, have can stomach a lot more than I could have, but it's really hard to it takes incredible amount of focus to see these things on a technical chart when you have the added stress. And so to have a computer to basically do that for you and just mark it up with exactly what you're looking for, which is really simple like line, it takes a lot off your shoulders. Yeah,
For sure. And you're right. It's the added stress and doing it correctly, right? If you miss something, if you misinterpret something, like you say, you can't quite see if that slope is positive or negative, and that might make a big deal in what you're trying to do, and do that for multiple charts. And just curious, what were you trading when you started, when you say that those
oh
first 15 minutes you lost a thousand
yeah,
dollars
good
were you
question. I'm
what
trying
were
to
you trading?
remember.
Do you remember?
I think it was the NQ, um
Okay.
natural gas. Yeah.
Natural gas, NG, yes, nanny.
NG, sorry.
Right?
Why did I
NQ
say
would be the
NQ?
NASDAQ, and
Yeah,
NASDAQ,
no,
right?
NG. Yeah.
NG.
Um,
Wow. So you started in the energies,
yeah,
trading
yeah.
those.
Well, coming
Wow.
from an NG town, I thought, why
There-
not? I
For
actually have
sure, you
friends.
must.
I have friends that work in the oil companies, and that's actually their profession is they trade. Um, but they're working like on a different level because they do have inside information. There's no doubt about it. Like they know the market's not only inside out and backwards, but they actually like those oil companies, they have information that this is not privy to the general public. Let's just put it that way.
For sure, and they're trading for the oil companies, right? So
Yeah,
they have
yeah,
it. They're not speculating as much as we would be, right? They might
yeah.
be actually using the futures for what they were originally intended, right? To lock in
Mhm.
prices for delivery. Um, but you're right. It's coming from an energy country, right? Canada, I would say, is big in energy. Calgary, energy town. That makes sense. Natural gas.
Yeah. Well, I chose it because it just, I just picked something and the chart looked really volatile, which is what I was looking for. Because it was just basically people are gonna laugh when I say this. It was just an 80-20 cross system.
Okay.
Right. It was an
Okay.
all-in system that basically was either it was always short or long, and it would only make money in a good long trend. But if you ever got chopped up, you would get murdered, and that's exactly what happened to me. And it was just the day that I picked. And actually, I really look back and I'm like, I'm quite glad I did really poorly that first day, because I think if I succeeded and made a lot of money on the first day, I probably would have been really cocky the next couple of days and might have really hurt myself financially, So I actually look back at that as a very positive thing. Do I miss $1,000? Of course I do, but it could have been a hell of a lot worse, is what I'm saying. I did no back testing, I did no validation, I did no practicing, and of course, that's something that any astute trader should do, is they should validate their system before they trade it, and of course
And
practice it.
to that point, you mentioned the auto trader. We'll take a look in just a moment. Can you use the auto trader with a simulated account? I know you had kind of gone from programming to trading in your description, but I wanted to see if there was a step we missed, and that was being able to use this with a simulated account.
Yeah, absolutely. So the
Okay.
software doesn't make any limitations in terms of whether or not using market replay data, historical data, live data with simulated. It doesn't matter. Pretty much any data feed that you're connected to, it'll use it. Yeah, so there's absolutely no limitations as far as that's concerned. Um, and yeah, of course, when you're ready to go live, you can certainly trade live as well. Yeah, and
And so
actually,
you
sorry,
go
I was
ahead.
going to say that there's actually two products involved, and we're sort of talking about the second one, the execution side, which is another product called Blackbird. But yeah,
Right. You mentioned 8 and 20
yeah, eighty
cross,
twenty,
right? So
yeah, yeah,
80-20.
yeah, or 20-80,
So
what do you want to call it?
and that was
Yeah.
that on an intraday chart that you were using?
I think it was intraday 5 minute chart,
Okay.
if I remember. Yeah. And
Just
that's one of
curious.
that's another. Yeah, I mean, like I don't remember entirely because it was a long time ago. And that's
Right.
a really great point. Is what a system that may work on a particular time frame may be disastrous on another one. And so again, it's very important to test your system out and figure out what time frame it actually is effective on, because the indicators will do different things on different time frames. So yeah.
Right. Right. I think this might be a good point to let's see the visualization of this because we're talking about all these technical terms and I just think they might be better served looking at it on a chart to see exactly what we're talking about, make that connection of idea in our head to what we can see on the chart.
Sure. So I've just got NinjaTrader up here, and I think in our prior discussions, you're saying that you like to talk about the 5200 SMAs quite a bit. I've also thrown up an 80x just for just because it something I've familiar with and just picked it at random. So don't take anything I'm building here as an actual system, by the way, guys. I'm just showing this as kind of an example, but this is
Right.
what I
And
learned.
just to be clear, yeah, this is for educational purposes only. This isn't
Yeah.
something we recommend. It's just to show you, hey, here's a common trading style or a common set of indicators that people talk about even on the TV, right? A 50-day moving average, a 200-day moving average. And then the ADX is a trend strength, not direction, but trend strength study as a way to possibly verify that a trend exists and is actually moving up or down rather than sideways. So just a couple of indications, but I think the 50 and 200, you might have heard of the golden
Mhm.
cross, death cross.
Right.
Even though people equate them with the 50 and 200, it's really a generic term, can be used for anything, but we're going to use the most commonly used indicators, periods for the moving average for this intent, for just showing you how this works.
Yeah, and actually, I remember those instructors back 15 years ago talked about the 5200. So absolutely, a lot of traders are looking at this. But I basically got the chart up here, and I've just opened up the Bloodhound interface over here, and you see how quickly I can just sort of put things together. So I'm gonna look for crossovers here, and I just pop a little crossover node in there, and I'm gonna configure them to look at the 50 and 200. So I can actually use any indicator that's on my system here. I've got quite a few, right? But I've got the SMA highlighted there, and I'm going to have it look against the 200.
So right now you're defining what that crossover is.
Yeah. Well, see, basically this little guy here. We call them solvers, and it's trying to say, okay, what do you want me to look at? And I'm saying, well, look at the 50 and the 200, and tell me the points where they cross over. So as soon as I plug this node in like that, the chart updates immediately, and you can see it's marked off all the locations where there is a 5200 crossover, which is like right here, there, right? If we scroll back, I'm sure we'll see another one right there. There's a the green means a bullish cross, and of course you can define what do you mean by bullish. I've basically said if the small moving average, like the 50, moves above the 200, that to me, I want to say that is bullish. That of course can be completely configured however you like it, and then vice versa with the 50 going down from the 200 as well.
So that shows up when you say it's marked, it actually shows up not on the chart, but it shows up down below in that bottom track, right? And it's
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
red and green for you because of how you define those rules, bullish or bearish.
yeah. And we can look at like a whole
Nice.
bunch of other stuff. Like I'll bring another example, and let's look at the slope, for example. All right, so I'm going to disconnect the crossover real quick so we can focus on slope for a bit. And let's look at the 200, the estimated 200 slope, like that. Okay, plug that in. And it's pre-configured, like the most common use, to be green when it's sloping upwards, red when it's sloping downwards. And yeah, basically that's the 200 there. So actually you see that it kind of went flat there. I don't have a definition for flat there. We can certainly define one if you want. But basically it's right now configured that the 200 is flat. It doesn't show anything. But if it's rising, or rather it's positive, slope up, turn it green. It's sloping down, turn red. Like look at this one here. This is very, very subtle, right? Something you can't really see unless you're squinting. But say you're like, okay, that's not good enough. I don't really want to take those opportunities. I don't want to look at these opportunities where it's basically flat. Like we're looking at a line that looks basically flat here. And I want to get rid of that. So I can actually pull this up here, configure it a little bit better. And I could be like, well, when it's rising by at least, a factor, like we have to kind of play with it because let's say at least a factor of 0.1. Let's just see if that will clear out a little bit. Okay, that was probably a little too aggressive there. Let's go. Everything's kind of scaled by the like the slope calculation, right? So even that's probably a little too aggressive. Let's see if we can go down from even further from that. Let's go half that value, right? But basically, what we're doing is we're eliminating all those areas where it's flat enough that we don't care. So you can see this is a pretty nice defined slope here. At 0.05, that's a slope calculation. That's flat enough that we were telling Bloodhound, I don't really care about that because it's a little too flat for my liking. Right, this one probably just made the threshold here. Right here, it looks like it's pretty flat entirely. So you can see how quickly I just punching in a couple numbers there can configure what we're looking for, and say, all right, now let's go ahead and combine some criteria here, and just to make it interesting, how about we look at the ADX as well here. So I got the ADX down here, and the ADX it's got kind of this built-in threshold line at 25, and it's basically said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're below that 25 line, you're looking kind of more of a consolidation or sideways trading kind of market. If you're above 25, you're more in a sort of a trending type market. And so let's just say we want to go in and mark those areas up so that we can see them, right? So I'm going to put another solver in called the threshold solver, but this time, instead of using the SMA, I'm going to use the ADX. So I'm going to search for the ADX on my system. There it is. I'm going to keep the period the same. That's the default period. Okay. And I'm going to open this guy up here and do a little bit of configuration. Okay. So I'm going to say, like, if the ADX is above 25, right? So we're in a quote unquote trending period. Just color that thing up. Oh, sorry, this is less than 25. Let's make that greater than 25. Let's just make it so we just got the zones above 25 there. Okay, so as you can see, the chart already is like how fast I can just in real time just kind of mark this chart up here. And anytime this now I've got it, so anytime the ADX is above this 25 line, I've got kind of this zone marked out. So that's kind of a great way to transpose. Say your eyes are not, you don't have to keep your eyes down here, you can keep them up here. And let's say you got this criteria where you're like, well, I only want to trade when the ADX is trending, saying it's trending, and there's also a crossover. Okay, so I can combine those two pieces of criteria together, right? I just put a little and node there. It's like English, right? I want these two nodes to be kind of agreeing with each other. In fact, and my demo guy, he always tells me, when you make these nodes, you got to name them appropriately. So let's call this one the ADX threshold trending. Okay, this one is the 50 200 cross. Okay, and I want to look at those instances where they both where I have both those criteria agreeing with each other, and only those two criteria agreeing with each other before I take any signal. So let's just take a look at the chart here, and you can see like this one marked up because our ADX is above the 25, and we had a crossover situation. Okay, so let's try to see if we can find another one. And that's another one right there. Okay, but look at this. So this little choppy section here. Okay, there was a cross here, but we didn't have a signal because we were below the 25 line. So, really quickly you could sort of create these systems and be like, eliminate things that that you think may not work, right? So this is actually thankfully it took this out because it was a choppy kind of area here, right?
Right. And that's, we talked about it this morning on our morning show. That's called whipsaw, where sometimes the indicators are lagging a little bit and the market reacts a little bit faster than those indicators can pick up. And so they might give you an indication and you say, okay, well, that's telling me to do this. And the market's gone the other way since then. And that's why, you have something like an ADX to help you identify when you're trending or not, or whatever it is. It could be an overbought, oversold indicator. It could be a volatility indicator, whatever it is. That's what I really like about this, is because you can have ideas about multiple parts of the chart, right? You've got data on top, you've got data beneath. You can combine them, and it quickly shows you, hey, these things are true. Let's mark it on the chart, right? Let's see it. You can see it all the way up through the chart.
Yeah, and again, like you can configure these to use any indicator on your system. So, I did a crossover with the 5200, but I've just thought of something. What if we did a crossover instead of this, ADX? As at the moment it goes below that 25 threshold, or maybe above that 25 threshold, and play with that for a bit. We could change that up. I can make another crossover, and I'm going over really simple kind of stuff, and that's because generally I'm not the demo guy when it comes to the to the software. I spend most of my days kind of like buried in code, so I tend to keep it simple, mainly because I don't want to make a fool out of myself, So, but let's just say let's have the ADX crossing the 25, right? So. Here we're gonna take the ADX instead of the SMA, and just like any of these guys, I can configure it with any indicator I want. So I just looked up the ADX there. I can do a little search, right? Pop that in there, and instead I'm gonna have it look at against a fixed value. We're gonna look at against 25 here. All right, I'm gonna pop that in, and let's just take a quick look at the chart. And you see immediately I've got it marked up for all the locations where the ADX is going up and down, up and down. That's probably not very useful, to be honest, but I just thought it'd be fun to show you like how quickly you can switch it up and try new things. And like once you kind of got on the chart, you can do kind of an eyeball test, and you can see like, all right, I can see maybe there's some good signals there, like almost immediately, or in this case, like there's nothing here.
Right.
So, but you can always use these as kind of additional criteria to confirm something, right?
Well, and Jeremy, I think it just goes to show we're not cherry picking. We're doing this live. We're finding
Yeah.
what is the chart looking
Yeah, what is this
here?
awful system you're showing us, guys?
Yeah. But you know what?
Yeah.
Like you said, like you had that first trade where
Yeah.
you were not a winner. Here's an example where you have an idea and maybe the chart says, you know what? Nice try. Maybe there's a way to refine it. Maybe you have the concepts down, but maybe the periods are different. But you can see pretty quickly where it doesn't work, or where it doesn't give you the indications that would make you a successful trader.
Yeah, and I think we'll just for the heck of it and just for the fun of it, let's just go ahead and see what would happen if we threw it into an auto trader, right? So
Okay.
again, this is Bloodhound. Okay, so this I'm gonna save this again. Bloodhound is think of it as like a signal engine. Okay, and I'm gonna just save this file here and call it demo, and I'm gonna close it down. And I'm just gonna take it off the chart because I'm gonna show you our other product. It's called Blackbird, and it integrates very closely with Bloodhound. And in the NinjaTrader kind of ecosystem, it's unlike Bloodhound, which is an indicator. Blackbird is a strategy. So the strategies inside of NinjaTrader allow you to actually manage the orders. Essentially that it manages the orders. Okay, so I'm gonna pop that on, and this is all simulated, by the way, guys. I am connected to a live data feed right now. This is the actual Apple price right now. But I've got Blackbird up. I'm gonna load it up, and I'm gonna plug in those signals that we worked on earlier, and we're gonna try to put in like a simple stop loss or profit target or something. Just play it out and see how it looks. And I'm gonna show you kind of how we use that to use the computer to a back test. Okay, all right. So just to be clear, I didn't practice this beforehand, so if I struggle a little bit, this is all kind of just like literally on the fly here. So where's that demo? So I'm gonna load up that demo, and I'm going to use the signals I defined there. Okay, and what I'm going to do is just define a really simple market entry, right? You're not kind of limited to any one kind of style of entry. In fact, so this product here is a fairly advanced product in terms of you can actually, program it to have multiple kind of entries of different types, limit entry, stop entries. You can tell exactly where you want to enter in terms of you can nail it to another indicator or a price with an offset, like a very common one. For example, let's just do a profit target, for example, 10 ticks, stop loss at 1.5 ATRs. Okay, so I'm going to just because maybe some viewers are like, well, is that all you got? There's a couple like simple options like that. Those are just kind of quick picks, common uses. But I'm going to open up one of these just so you can see the power behind this and what we can actually do with it. So I've told it stop loss at 1.5 ATRs, right? And I've basically is configured as a price with an offset of an ATR 20. But I can change that to literally any indicator on my system. You could say, I want the stop loss to be the ADX. I want the entry to be that plus whatever factor times the ADX. Go ahead and do that. Yeah, it doesn't complain. It's just, it'll in fact, let's do it right now just for the fun of it. All right. So I have no idea. That's probably a really wide stop. I'm guessing let's see, ADX is can be anywhere between like 50 25 to 100. Let's see what we got, 30, 40. Yeah, so we're gonna have some crazy white stops here, but just again, this is just for the fun of it. I maybe reduce the factor a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna go 1.5 times the ADX just to make it like a little bit reasonable. Okay, so that's a market entry, profit target at 10 ticks, and a stop loss at 0.5 ADX. Actually, you know what? Let me go ahead and save that just so we don't lose our work. Let's call it demo 2. Okay. All right. And I'm going to reload the chart so that NinjaTrader can go ahead and do some calculations. Oh, actually, and this is where I'm getting at. Like, I'm not the demo guy, but I have to configure him first to do to turn the back testing and enable the back testing. So let me bear with me while I just do that real quick. I know we're running pretty short on time, but hopefully I can get this out in time. So I have back test mode on, turn that on. Okay. And here we go. Let's do strategy performance. I don't think we see any trades here, actually. Let's take a look. Yeah, we saw there's a trade right there. Okay, we do have some trades. Let's take a look at the strategy performance. All right, so this is again the back testing. Okay, it looks like it just took one trade over that short. I got a little bit of data. I don't have much loaded up, but of course, if you're doing this for real, you probably load up days and days of data, 30, 40, 50 days, 180 days, whatever. I think I only got 5 days in there. Only one trade was taken. And as you can see, or no, sorry, there was a couple of trades, about five trades in total. But that's the gist of it. That's how you would create a back test. And then you could tabulate your results and go back to drawing board and see, expand it, look at your ideas and iterate and just keep iterating. We call that the scientific approach, as opposed to what I did earlier in my career, which is shooting from the hip. So.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And there's so much, there are some great books on back testing, the idea of, like you said, iterations, divvying up time, divvying up the entire data set into different time slices and then applying the results if you're optimizing to out of sample time. I mean, there's a whole theory about back testing. So if you're going to get into it, understand that we're just looking at historical data to see what might have happened. And of course, these are based on rules that we create out of our head. So, there might be some room for tweaking, room for, making them better for the market you're looking at. You don't want to overfit or curve fit, but this is really interesting because this is so easy. And this is from my experience of working with, developing, implementing, training, backtesting from different vendors over 20 years. This is a really neat interface to make it so fast. That's what I'm impressed with, the speed at which you can take an idea, put it on the chart, and then backtest when you get there. But I think the first step is always, does this look right? Creating this signal, does this look right? Does that make sense? Is that what I'm trying to do? And generally it's going to do what you tell it. So if you've told it the right things, it'll do what you want. And that's what I love about that interface. It's so easy. We are right up on time, Jeremy. I think we're going to have you back on and explore some ideas. And yeah, I'm glad you saved that in case it was a really good, really good idea.
Money making
But
system, right?
yeah, but you could do this on really any markets. I always like to say it's just data. So we could do this on the E-minis. We could do this on the crude charts, nat gas. Maybe we can get back that $1,000 that your first trade lost, Jeremy.
Right.
But I'm just saying that, of course, past performance, not
Yeah.
indicative of future results.
Yeah. Education money.
Exactly. J-Man says he's a viewer on our bookend show, says the whole time frame thing can really mess him up. We were talking about how indicators might have different parameters for different time periods. This looks like it could help with that. Turtle lives in Indiana, near Whiting, which is another energy, I wouldn't say hub, but it's definitely an energy area in the Midwest. And a couple other people very appreciative. So thank you, viewers, for coming. Jeremy, where can people reach you? And if they wanted to explore the conversation, I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, so basically everything is accessible at our website here. And if I can just try to bring that up, give me a second here. It seems to be kind of stuck. All right, I'm going to just do it here. All right, so SharkIndicators.com. And it looks like I'm already at the documentation page, but as you can see, once you get here, our products our main products are Prominent, Blackbird, and Bloodhound. As it turns out, a lot of course you're aware it's Black Friday. That's this Friday, and so we actually are running that sale right now. And if you do go to our website, you can just press this button here. It should take you to kind of an order form. We've taken quite a lot of prices, our prices down for Black Friday. And that's basically the best way to reach us at the moment. And we do have like support. If you have questions about like how to use the software and whatnot, there's of course a bit of a learning curve in some cases. We do try to respond within one business day. Do allow a little bit for of course the holidays, but yeah, SharkIndicators.com. That's the best place to get us.
Awesome, Jeremy. Thanks so much for coming on. I hope you have a nice couple of days. I know you're probably up and running Thursday, Friday, maybe not with the markets, but I want to wish you a good rest of the week, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, Tom. I'd love to be back. Yeah,
we'll definitely do this again. I want to thank everybody out there for coming, and I hope you got something out of this. And please, follow up with Jeremy, a great guy to talk to, and really powerful product here. So in the meantime, we do have bars closing today at 3:15, and we will be back with Patrick Mullen from Gorilla Futures next week on Traders Workshop. In the meantime, have a great trading day. We'll see you then.
Thanks, guys.